Hey guys, welcome back to the Another Excuse podcast, where we chat to founders, creators, and self-starters about how they started and where they are now. I'm your host, Byron Greeley, and today's guest is Niall Cleaver, the founder of Cupsley. Cupsley is going to be Britain's premium luxury coffee brand, with their first product, a premium luxury reusable coffee cup. It's basically a statement piece. It's a very interesting angle, and they're going after a very interesting market. In our conversation, we discuss things like his experience starting Cupsley, the importance of building your personal brand and building in public, and dealing with setbacks and productive work. It's a wide-ranging conversation. We cover a lot of ground, and it's an interesting one. I enjoyed it. I'm sure you will too. Enjoy the show. Hey Niall, thanks for joining me today. To get started and to get a bit of context, could you describe what you do and how you ended up here?
Yeah, so I'm Niall, I'm 23 and I'm kind of the CEO and founder of Cupsley, which is Britain's luxury coffee brand. And yeah, kind of fell into it, to be honest with you, because I was basically unemployable from a young age and decided to give entrepreneurship kind of a go. So yeah, kind of fell into it, it's turned out okay, to be honest with you, but yeah.
Awesome. And now you mentioned you're working on Cupsley. Can you tell us a bit more about it? What exactly is Cupsley?
Yeah, so as I mentioned previously, Cupsley is Britain's luxury coffee brand, with phase one being a luxury reusable coffee cup, where we envision a world where fashion, luxury, and sustainability all intersect. And it basically all began because I'm a massive coffee lover. I don't know about yourself, but I love coffee. And I was standing actually in Costa in my local coffee shop, and I wanted to do my bit for the planet and buy a reusable coffee cup. And, you know, I'll be totally honest with you. I'm someone who kind of cares about appearance, cares about how I look, kind of the aesthetic. And, you know, speaking to friends and family as well, you know, everyone loves a good aesthetic photo, you know, kind of cares about what they wear. So yeah, I went to buy a reusable coffee cup and it just wasn't my cup of tea. I was looking at them, they were quite, you know, just plain, kind of simple, ugly. And I bought one and it's just been sat gathering dust in my parents' cupboard for ages now. And it was then when I decided to kind of create my own statement piece, kind of craft kind of a symbol of fashion, because we want this to be known as a fashion accessory. And yeah, I reached out to friends, kind of told them the idea. Some loved it, some hated it, but the more people we told and the more data we collected, it was worth it. And now, you know, nearly 2 years into the build, and you know, we've been documenting the journey on LinkedIn, and everyone, you know, the feedback we gathered is looking good. So yeah,
that's great. So would you say because of that data that you collected, that's what caused you to decide that this was a business worth pursuing?
Yeah. So I think, you know, a lot of people go into the startup journey of they've got an idea, let's just do it, without really seeing if it's worthwhile. So we had, you know, when I started it, I reached out to probably about 15 friends, some people I've never met on, like, in person before. We just connections were built on LinkedIn. And I was like, I'm thinking about this idea. I want to turn it into a symbol of fashion, create a, you know, a reusable coffee cup that's luxurious, but it's making a statement and it's a fashion accessory. And, you know, some people told me, oh, you know, this is a really tough market, you know, it's massive, the coffee industry, everything like this, which it is. But I spotted a gap, and the more people I spoke to, they saw where we were trying to fit into that, you know, industry. So yeah, I'd say the data has been massive, and documented on LinkedIn. You know, before we've even launched a product, we've been able to collect so much data and make changes to the product before we've actually launched, which is one of the advantages of obviously documenting the journey.
Yeah, definitely. And one question I have around like the type of product you're creating, it's obviously a reusable cup. So have you considered the difficulties that may arise with return customers? For example, you know, you sell it to one person. If it's a great product and it does a job, they're not necessarily going to buy another one relatively soon.
Yeah. So, you know, eventually Cupsley will be Britain's luxury coffee brand, where we envision, our own coffee stores, everything like that, subscription basis. But we want to push our brand out there first to be known, as a luxury brand. So, the 5 to 10 year goal is to be a full scale coffee brand where, we will have frequent customers and we can build that relationship, because, something we really, really genuinely care about as a brand is that emotional connection with our customers. We want to make sure it's the best it can be. So yeah, long-term goal, full scale coffee brand, but it's going to take a lot of work. Awesome. So,
but yeah, that's amazing. And it's great that you are obviously thinking about all possible avenues and long-term goals. I like it. And well, you've touched on it about like you building in public and the attention it's getting and helping Cupsley get more attention. But before you started Cupsley, you ran a different business called Social Library. What exactly does Social Library do?
Yeah, so Social Library was a personal branding agency. So we would, manage basically people's personal brands on LinkedIn for CEOs, C-suite executives, kind of high-profile individuals, where we would basically create content for them and promote them as a person to the world. So completely different though, from going from service-based to product-based, complete different skill sets, but they've actually helped me massively on this journey of figuring out what to do with kind of branding, things like that, but then going into service-based as well. I'm quite lucky that my dad actually runs a manufacturing company. So I'm quite lucky in a sense of I've got two solid education bases, let's say, that I've been able to learn from service, but also learn a bit from manufacturing as well.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. And I wanted to ask, what has been like the biggest difference between the two? Because you said one's service, one's product. Like, what are the differences there?
I think the biggest one that I've felt is with service-based, if you make a mistake, you can change it pretty instantly. If you've put up a wrong logo, you've put something out there that's not quite right, you can go on and you can edit it. You can change it kind of within a day or so. With building a physical product, we're actually in the process now of getting tooling made. So there's no going back now once we've done this. If we want to, put a new logo now, because we've got an embossed logo on our thing, on our luxury reusable coffee cup. If we now want to change that logo, we have to get brand new tooling just to make this part, which costs a lot of money and probably another 6 months on. So I'd probably say the timing's been a massive difference. You need to be patient with building a brand that's a physical product and act a bit slower in that sense. But with service-based, you can be quick, you can make the mistakes and you can correct them very quickly as well. So that'll probably be the biggest difference I've learned from both.
And does impatience creep in at all?
Yeah, I think that's something that I've learned. I've got a co-founder, Rachel, as well, and that's something she's taught me massively. I remember when I built Cupsley first, because obviously I found it in 2022, and then Rachel came on board in December. So I started in June, and Rachel came on board in December. And I remember telling Rachel, I'm going to have it done in 6 months. I'm going to get this all done. It's going to be the best product. We're going to take it to market. And now we're nearly 2 years on. But no, Rachel's taught me that massively. Sometimes the lower the risk, the quicker you can act. But the larger the risk, the longer the decisions you need to take. So it's just about balancing when to go quick or when to slow down, really plan, really think about what you want to act on, and then make the decision.
Yeah, that's well said. That's a great lesson. And you've touched on it a bit, but you've started these businesses at a very young age. You said you're only 23. So what exactly drove you to starting businesses instead of getting a normal job?
Yeah, so obviously being unemployable was a big one for me. I basically, growing up through school, I really struggled. It just wasn't something that, I was good at. And I actually left school with no English qualifications whatsoever. But I think the biggest issue for me personally was having a twin brother as well, who's the same age, but the complete opposite. He was the A-star student, and I was the student with the CDEs. He's now working at Microsoft, and I just couldn't get a job. The only person that took me on was my dad. So I started working for my dad, and I never wanted to be the kid that worked for my dad for my whole life. So I actually remember sitting in the front office going, right, I really need to do something here. You know, I've been handing CVs in, I've been going into places, just getting rejected after rejection after rejection. And I remember sitting in the front office in the factory, and I actually just wrote my first LinkedIn post ever. And it was reviewing Gary Vee's new book. And it was the worst post I ever put out. But that was the turning point of, I need to do something for myself because no one else is taking me on. So let's do something and start building something from there. And that's why, just from not being able to find a job, you know, being dyslexic as well, that English qualification stopped me from getting jobs that I really wanted to get into. So yeah.
What was like, well, you mentioned that you wanted to do something else, but why pick LinkedIn? What made you think that that was the right way to go?
So speaking to friends who are actually in the marketing space as well before I met them, and obviously listening to Gary Vee, who's, you know, a big inspiration of mine, they've always saying LinkedIn's the next platform, LinkedIn's the next platform. And I was just like, I can't see it. And I remember saying to myself, okay, let's go 3 months all in on LinkedIn where, you know, I'm writing content 3 to 5 times a week. I'm engaging. I was probably spending 2 hours a day on the platform. I was just going all in. And I remember looking at it 3 weeks in going, it's just nothing like they said it is. You know, I'm looking at all these business profiles, but once that algorithm started kicking in and you started engaging with the right people, my feed now is full of inspiring people, like some people, Izzy Pryor, people like this, that have just documenting all their journey, and they're all so young as well. And I really fitted into that group. And the more people I connected with, the more kind of connections I built, it was like, okay, it's worth it now. And then the opportunities that came from it has been insane. From, you know, never would I have thought that I'd be building a business, but let alone connecting with the likes of Mark Randolph, co-founder of Netflix. That was just blowing me away. And yeah, I think it was just a case of looking back and seeing what people said about the platform and just going, all right, I'm going to go all in for 3 months. And it turned out to be okay. I'm here a year and a half later. So
yeah. And I can relate to that. Like posting your journey online and sharing your thoughts out and just putting them out there, people tend to resonate with that. And it's surprisingly so. But were you strategic at all about the growth, or were you just like, I'm going to put stuff out there and do my best at what I think works and see what happens?
I had no idea what I was doing at the start. No idea. I was just posting random stuff all the time. But then when I got into about 6 or 7 months in, I started learning a lot from other people who were actually fully invested into LinkedIn. I remember actually sending my first post to someone going, is this okay? And they came back saying, kind of, they rewrote it for me, lucky enough, but it was so badly formatted. It was so wrong. It was awful. But that's when I thought, okay, I've got to learn how the platform works. So I started actually connecting with probably around 5 to 10 people that are, you know, really successful on the platform, and started kind of taking their posts apart and looking why it worked, looking at the hook, looking at the format, looking at the CTA, C2C, and started really taking it apart. And then probably around, I'll probably say the 10-month mark is when I started really seeing some good traction. And it's just been going up and up from there, really. But it seems weird, but the less I started focusing on myself and started focusing on how I can benefit other people, is when the biggest change happened for me.
Yeah, I don't think many people take the time to actually pick apart successful posts and understand why it works, because it's such a small nuance that you don't realize. It just, like, on the outside, if you don't take the time to look at it, it just seems like someone just wrote their thoughts. But when you understand, like, each line means something, they've taken the time to put specific words in that sentence, and like as few words as possible. It's like down to a science almost.
Yeah, and I also think a lot of people, like, I was scared to go wrong right at the beginning. You know, I was scared this post, like, I don't want it to flop. I really don't want it to flop. But the more I've gone on it now, we need these down moments, these posts that just don't perform well, to be able to go, okay, this is why it didn't work. We can now put it right. So I think embracing failure is a big thing of building a brand on LinkedIn, but also like in startups as well. You just got to embrace failures, because that's when you get, you know, you're able to collect the most amount of data, So test as much as you can, collect the right data, and then make the right changes to that data. I think that's the biggest thing I've learned, building on LinkedIn, but also building a startup as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned that some amazing opportunities and meeting new people have come off the back of this, but what would you say are the biggest benefits for someone, say, considering starting their personal brand? What would you say are the biggest benefits of starting one?
So for me, coming from obviously a startup background now, building out a brand in public, I touched on it a bit earlier, but being able to collect data before I've even built a product, I didn't have to create a MVP, take it to market to gather feedback. I've been able to, show people the design, what don't they like, what do they like, to a community of now nearly 25,000 people. They're sending feedback, and we can just write down a list of feedback, kind of the most, frequent feedback we can see, kind of the shape, the color, everything like that. And we can make the changes before we even start production. I think that's the biggest thing for me. So yeah, I'd probably say being able to collect data and making the changes before we even take it to market, it's been a massive, massive benefit for me.
And earlier on, what kind of opportunities or things came from you building your personal brand that you didn't expect?
So I think the biggest one for me is obviously meeting my co-founder, Rachel. We never ever met before, only on LinkedIn. We never spoke, we didn't do anything. And, when I found it in 2022, I really needed help with marketing this product as a luxury brand. And that's something I lacked, as a founder, was I'm good at bringing the ideas together, but how can we get exposure from the right people? And I really need help with marketing. So I actually reached out to Rachel. She had her other business, because her marketing was, a media brand in the marketing space, very well known. And I was like, I want her on the team. Like, she'd be amazing. And I remember I think she's got around, I want to say 250,000 now on her because of marketing page. And I remember going, there's no way she's going to respond to me. There is no way she's going to respond to my DM. So I actually found her on Instagram, and I DM'd her on Instagram going, hi, I've got an idea. Can we jump on a call? And that was literally my kind of intro. And then two hours later, we were on a call, and yeah, we were communicating how she could help. And then 6 months later, I was like, okay, I really want you to be a co-founder now, because I think you're better than working together. I'd rather have you on the team, on the board with me. And then she agreed to come on in December, which is exciting. So I'd probably say, yeah, the biggest opportunities, I think, is the people that I've been able to meet, getting investment as well, from the team that I've been following our journey on LinkedIn. But yeah, the biggest one for me is the people and the connections.
And has Rachel ever told you what made her respond to that initial message?
She has, but I don't know if she's telling the truth. She, we were kind of in the similar boat that we, I still live with my parents. This is my parents' house, everything like that. She lives with her mum, and we were going through similar journeys, and we were always engaged with each other's content, but we kind of had similar traits of, we were very dedicated, we were very hardworking, and that was one of the reasons she wanted to work with me, and she saw the vision for what I wanted to do. But it also helps that she's a massive coffee lover as well. So
nice, awesome. And so you started a personal brand, you took that leap, you've started 2 businesses. Were there any fears involved in starting these things?
I think the biggest fear with me was what other people would think, but the biggest one was regret. I think that was my biggest. Not really service-based, because I didn't have to invest loads of money into the service base, which was, if it failed, it failed, which was okay. But with Cupsley, I've invested pretty much all my savings into what we're building now. But I know if it turns out the way that I think it will turn out, it will be worth it. But I think, yeah, fear was a big one, and then regret. Just knowing that, I think a lot of people reframe the question of, what's the worst that can happen? But then I've started reframing it to, what if it works out better than you thought? And that's been a big mindset shift for me, with the fear, because what if it does work out better than you think? and it does become successful. Because at the end of the day, I am 23, and I've said to myself that I'm going to go all in for at least 3 to 5 years and see how it comes out on the other side.
Great. Yeah. I mean, it's all down to like risk tolerance and reframing, like you've just said you did. And it's so important.
Yeah.
And like many people can see the benefits of starting some form of personal brand, like putting themselves out there. I mean, you look at someone like Mr. Beast and the products he's built off his brand. So what advice would you give to someone who can see the benefits, but like fear is holding them back from just starting?
I think I always say to myself that, you've got to create the right noise for you to be giving yourself the best opportunities. If you want to be seen by this organization you want to work with, Apple, Microsoft, whoever you want to work with, you've got to create the right noise and the right impact that, people who work for them will notice you. People see it as bragging, but I think, you're making yourself the priority before anything. And if you really want to, like I said, get seen by these people, work for these people, just show off all your talents. People might say it's bragging, people might say it's not genuine, but at the end of the day, you're putting yourself first and you're building the blocks for your life, for your future life. So yeah, just create the right noise for you and go for it would be my biggest advice, because I think a lot of people are in that scared zone of what if it doesn't work out. Like I'll be honest with you, I've lost loads of friends throughout this journey, but I've gained even better ones who get it, the ones that have actually pushed me even further, guided me in the right direction, because I've never had all the answers ever, but the people now that I'm kind of surrounded with do, so they've been able to guide me and help me.
Yeah, I agree with that. And putting yourself out there and sharing, like if you look at someone's LinkedIn that doesn't post anything, it's quite one-dimensional. I mean, you see their employment history and maybe some certificates or something like that, but it doesn't make you like a whole person. There's so many other aspects to each and every single one of us, and you can't expect an employer to understand that or just assume it. You've got to show people that. And
I think I was going to jump on that as well. It's a case of, you can tell people what they want to see, but when you actually show them and, you're showing your portfolio off to millions and millions of people on LinkedIn, it only takes one person to see it and go, oh, wow. Like, I think a lot of people I've seen I think it was the Spotify. There was a person who wanted to go get a job at Spotify, and they did this really cool graphic. And it was basically their CV, but it was like a Spotify version of like when they do like the highlight reel. And someone from Spotify actually seen it and reached out to them, all because he decided to get creative and just post it. And I was like, if more people did that just to create the right noise, it would be so beneficial.
Yeah. And now with how easy it is to simply apply to a job, you're literally just some words on a page. You filled out a form and people are looking for something that makes you stand out. And whatever field you're in, I'm sure you can offer some unique perspective into that particular role, and then that automatically makes you stand out amongst hundreds of applicants.
Yeah, 100%.
And so you seem really busy. I mean, you're working on a company, but you're also running your personal brand and you're quite active on there too. So how do you remain consistent with it all?
So this is a big goal of mine in 2024. Last year, I mixed busy and productive, like up really badly. And, I thought, I need to be working 24/7. I'm a business owner, I'm a startup founder. I need to be sat at my desk doing everything all the time. If I'm not working, something's wrong. But the more people I've spoken to within the space, it's like productivity is the number one. Busy makes you seem productive, but productive is where the work actually gets done. So I've actually been working less than I normally would, still working a lot, but working less than I normally would, and making time for myself. Going to the gym is, I dedicate 2 hours a day to that every single day, no matter what. It's 2 hours in the gym, sauna, ice, workout, everything like that. But then just being productive when there's work, when I've caught up or the business is on a quiet period, we wait for a team to get back to us or something like that. I make sure I use that time to have downtime, spend time with my family, because I think it really recharges me in that sense. Because last year, if I was less busy, I'll just make something up to make sure I was busy, and then that led to burnout and things like that.
Yeah, those are such it's just about understanding what works for you, because especially on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people sharing what works for them. And then because they've got huge followings and things like that, people assume that that is the only and right way to do it, and can lead to burnout because you're trying to replicate someone else's way of doing it.
Yeah. So many people that I hear on LinkedIn, I spend 5 hours a day engaging, do all this. And I'm just like, there's no way I can do this now. I maybe spend an hour and a half a day on LinkedIn, but that is not like just sitting down and engaging. That's from sharing my content to engaging with others, but that's throughout the whole day. I might do half an hour in the morning, half an hour at lunch, half an hour in the evening, but that's me done.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, like you mentioned, they look up to these LinkedIn influencers, as everyone's calling them now, and they think that's the only way you can get it done. But some of my, closest friends and some of the biggest creators on there spend half an hour a day, and their posts are some of the biggest creators on this platform from engaging for 30 minutes a day. But I think the biggest difference is making sure you leave an impact and making sure you leave a statement when you are engaging. Make sure it's, when people see your name, they're getting as much value and impact as possible. I think that's a big point I'd like to make is, if you are doing 30 minutes a day, just make it 30 minutes a day. Make sure it's the best 30 minutes you've done, and leave an impact that way.
Yeah. I think it's way better being more intentional than passively feeling. Well, it's going back to the point you made about being busy and actually being productive. And because you have to do your 2 hours on LinkedIn because you're seeing other people doing it, doesn't mean you're actually being productive on the platform.
Yeah.
And what has been the hardest part of this entrepreneurial journey so far?
Oh, the hardest part. I think patience, as I mentioned earlier, would be a big one. But also, this is a tough one because there's so many that I could say. I'd say patience and finding the right team. I think that's a big one for me. When I started Cupsley, we found our first designing team and branding team, and we went through the journey with them for about 7 months. And we got to the end of the 7 months, and they showed us the first ever draft of the branding and the product design. And I remember looking at it, and I wasn't 100% on it. And we actually sent it to our research group. And we asked our research group, because throughout the whole process, we had 30 people that went from start to finish, from the initial design all the way to our final design. And I remember sending it to one person in our research group. And she messaged me going, "You cannot take this to market. This is awful." And I went, "Oh, damn." And I remember that was the day that we jumped on a call with our design team and branding team, and we did part ways. They just wasn't the right fit for us. And that was my fault as a founder, not doing enough research into them as a business. And now we're working with the team from the Alloy, who have worked with, many high-end brands, luxury brands, and you can tell right from the get-go that they are the ones for us. They are as invested in the business as we are in them, which is, really great to see. So I'd probably say, finding the right team, and that comes with patience as well. Because I think a lot of people, the first person they reach out to, they want to work with them just because they look good or their portfolio is amazing. But I think you got to probably get a list of between 5 and 10 people that you would really like to work with, and just be patient with it. Have calls with each of them, spend time really, doing your due diligence on them as people and as a company, and then make your decision. Because I think if you find the right team from the beginning, you can grow together, and they can understand you more as a business as well, and you can understand them as people and a business. So that relationship, is getting stronger and stronger as the days go by, and long term that will benefit both of you, massively amounts. Yeah,
I can imagine being 7 months in and having a setback like that must have been quite difficult to deal with. How did you deal with that, like emotionally? And continue to move forward?
Yeah, so when obviously we parted ways, it was, a massive kind of down, a massive shock really. And I remember it probably took us around 3 weeks where we were just like, oh, like, damn, we were so close but so far away. But then, after probably that 3 weeks, we were back on it then, and it was, okay, let's find right people now. And lucky for us, it's turned out to be the best thing that happened to us on this journey so far. Having that person tell us you cannot take us to market, it is awful, was the turning point for us to make a product now that is way better than the old product. So yeah, it's just about, I think, just embracing the journey is a big point. Not everything will go right. A lot of people tell you, but when you're actually in it, it is a shock to the system. You do want to kind of give up. You do doubt yourself. There's moments where you're like, is this idea really, really worth it? But then when you now send the new design to people and they're going, wow, like, I'm ready to buy this now. We've got an email list of 1,000 people ready to kind of buy when we launch. It's amazing to see. So yeah, just embrace the downfalls. Things happen, and just be open-minded. I think that's a big one. Just embrace it.
And what advice would you give to someone wanting to find the right team? Because I mean, you've obviously learned from your mistakes. So how do you go about finding the right people now?
I think it's values is a big thing, and find people in your specific space. For example, we were looking at people that were in manufacturing who design, manufacturing stuff, but we weren't looking at people who were in the luxury space. And that's the space that we wanted to get in. So find kind of similarities that you can both bounce ideas off, and values. And then really niche down to a specific industry you're going for, because there's always experts within a specific industry. So take the time to find them people, and like I mentioned, have calls with them and really find if you bounce off each other.
Great. And what has been the hardest part of this journey so far?
Hardest part so far? Do you know what? Negotiation, I'd probably say. For me personally, I've always been a yes man all my life. Yes, let's do it this way. First options, but being able to, say, no, we want to do it this way. We've got to do it this way. Leading the brand as I want to lead it. I think that's the hardest change I've had to do as a person and as a founder is, sticking to, no, we want to do it this way. This is the direction we're going in, and doing it. Because I think a lot of distractions creep in, and you can kind of pivot and go, oh, this will get us quick results, so I'm going to go this way, where, you've got to think of the longevity of the business. If you know the direction you're going to go in, put a stamp on it and say, yes, I'm doing it this way, and move forwards. But I've said, in the past, I've just been like, yeah, let's do it for the first person I've ever met. And I'm just like, why? I should have just took my time and made the right decision.
Yeah, I can relate to that too. Because there's also a lot of lessons learned from other people speaking about it, that like moving fast and not giving it much thought to sort of get something out there and then learn from it and iterate.
Yeah.
It's like balancing the two, because if you move too fast and just act impulsively, then you may be dealing with the wrong people. And so it's finding that balance of like going your way in a sense, but also getting the right people.
Yeah, it's actually funny you say that, because I had a call with a person called Ben Gallagher, who was just on Dragon's Den with Lux Collective, and I had a call with him, and he said, slow is sometimes the fastest growth. So, a lot of people are ready to move really quickly, but sometimes that is, quick decisions, wrong outcome, where if you're, moving at a slower pace, really discussing the decisions, that's where you get the fastest growth. And it really hit me then, like, just slow is faster.
Yeah.
And yeah, really leaning into that.
Yeah, that's great. And so we mentioned you're young and you've started multiple businesses, but would you describe yourself as having a specific trait that most people don't have?
I wouldn't say different. I always think I'm just an ordinary person as well. But I think just being able to bounce back, I've always tried things in the past. During COVID, I decided to bring out a clothing line because I was bored, and I just started manufacturing things from my bedroom, and it was just speaking to manufacturers, just because, sitting still and doing nothing doesn't do anything for me. I always want to create something, and, seeing something come from nothing to something, really inspires me. So I wouldn't say I wouldn't have a trait, but I think just being able to just bounce back and come up with new ideas, new things to learn, new things to do, I think is a big one for me.
And do you think that bouncing back is what differentiates you from, say, people who succumb to that fear and actually never start?
Yeah, I would say so. A lot of people that I've spoken to now who are running massive businesses, they speak to a lot, is they're willing to do what the majority aren't, as I always say. And it's, you get to that fear stage, and a lot of people then, crawl into a little ball, and they're like, okay, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But the people who are now, really successful, they get to that point, but then they double down and they just do it anyway, and they go all in. And that's the biggest difference I've seen from people who are less successful than others, let's say.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've noticed the most from speaking to people on this podcast and founders. The main differentiator is they don't dwell on those setbacks. They just see it as a learning opportunity, and they just keep going forward. Whereas a lot of people let those fears get the better of them and don't move forward.
Yeah, 100%.
And did you always see yourself as an entrepreneur?
I've always wanted to run my own business. I think, seeing my brother, he runs a business, and obviously my dad runs a business. I've always kind of been around, let's say I've never known anything different, because I've always been in a family that ran businesses. My uncle runs a business, his own business, my brother, my dad. So I've always, I guess, wanted to run my own business from kind of looking up to them guys. But no, I think I just kind of fell into it, to be honest with you. So
that's interesting. Like, being exposed to it more than the average person probably makes it feel a bit more attainable than someone who has parents and siblings who are just working a normal 9 to 5.
Yeah, I think so as well. Being able to, people have gone through what you're going through currently. So having that kind of, support system, I'm able to ask questions and be able to kind of get the answers because they've gone through it already. Where, I'm quite lucky and privileged in that sense, because I'll probably hold my hands up and say, if you're trying to build a business with maybe parents, or you don't know anyone that has run a business, that can be very daunting in itself. So yeah, I am very lucky and privileged that I'm, surrounded by people who have run successful businesses already, to be able to kind of guide me.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people get huge benefits from being in sort of entrepreneur support groups where you can tell them about your problems and they understand the problems inherently. They've gone through it through experience. And so the advice they give is very different to, say, a family member who has no idea what those problems are and they're just being supportive.
Yeah, 100%. But I also think the biggest difficulty I've had as well is, it's going to sound bad, but like, my dad has been running a business, I wouldn't say the old way, but the old way, where now, we've got to lean more into personal brands, into more social media, into more emotional connection, storytelling, where, as an older generation, they're not quite understanding this. So it's a case of balancing, okay, they can offer you great advice, but when is it that you need to take your own advice and go for it? So it's about weighing up the options there as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, someone like Cody Sanchez, who's built her whole personal brand around buying those older businesses and simply just modernizing it, can add so much value to it. So yeah, I definitely understand that. And what do you think all entrepreneurs need to have?
I think just an attitude to get things done. If it's, if you've got work to be doing, just get it done there and then, crack on with it, because, no one is going to come and save you. The only person that can save you is you. So if you've got work to be doing, get it done. Don't delay it because you've got to, I don't know, you want to watch a film or something like that. Treat yourself, but get the work done and then go and watch the film. Like, reward yourself for the work you've done, I think is a big one. So yeah, I go and get it attitude.
Yeah, taking full responsibility for your actions, and like you're in control of your destiny, basically. However cheesy that may sound, it's like it's up to you, and no one else is going to come do it for you.
Yeah, and I think that's a big challenge in itself, because it's easy to want to go out with friends, want to go to the cinema, want to go out for loads of food, but there's a time and place for it all. Sometimes you are going to have to sacrifice that time to really focus on your goals, because you can see in two ways. You got the build your life now for an easy life later, as everyone says, and I really see value in that. And your real friends will understand, and they'll support you, and the ones that unfortunately don't will you kind of grow apart. But there's no hard feelings there. You've just got to really focus on where you see your future going and just nail it.
Yeah, I can relate to that. The people who actually support you will explicitly support you and be there for you, and the ones that aren't really supporting you are the ones that are going to give you a bit of trouble. That, and it's great. It's good to hear people like yourself speak about that, because I think a lot of people weigh friendships very heavily, and they rely on them, and so when they start distancing themselves, they feel like they're responsible to keep those relationships going, even though they're not great for their personal growth.
Yeah, and it's like, you're putting so much energy into keeping this friendship alive, when actually you are drifting apart, because it's not there's no bad situation. You're just growing apart as people, where if you put all that energy into now focusing on business, there's loads of benefits there.
Yeah. So this is quite a tricky question, but I take full responsibility if it's difficult to answer. So what have you changed your mind about in the last few years, and why?
Ooh, change your mind about. That is hard, isn't it? Change your mind about. I think that I can do it is a big one for me, because I think believing in myself, because obviously going through school and being dyslexic and not getting the qualifications and having doubts and going, all right, I failed this about 8 times now, this is like impossible, I can't do it. And now kind of bouncing back and going, you are much more capable than you think, has been a big thing for me, because I may struggle to read and write, but I found my way of learning now. And I think that's been the biggest change that I've seen in myself, is, believing in myself that I can do it.
Yeah, that's great. And so, as you mentioned, Cupsley is still in its early stages, and we touched on it being a coffee brand in the next 5 to 10 years. But what exactly are your hopes for the future of Cupsley and the company?
Yeah, so we want to be, obviously, the most luxurious coffee brand in the world. I think we really want to do. But obviously the starting point is to make sustainability more fashionable with the luxury reusable coffee cup. A big message for us is, if we want to make sustainability more popular, we first make it more attractive. And that's something that we're focusing on now, is, being able to target the younger audience to be more sustainable. But that comes from making products that attract the right people.
Amazing. And what do you think will be the hardest part about getting there?
I think for us being a luxury brand, it's the exposure. Not everyone is going to see eye to eye where we see. A big thing for us is, we're probably going to upset 70% of people, being a luxury brand. But we've got to remember that the 30% who do buy into us, as we buy into them, is going to be the 30% that genuinely cares. So I think the biggest challenge is being able to go, I think, like I mentioned earlier, just sticking to our ways of, this is how we are doing it, and let's not pivot in a sense of, like I mentioned, this is an easy fix. Getting in front of the right people, getting the right exposure is going to be so important. But luckily I've got Rachel helping me with the marketing, like I said, so hopefully she'll be able to smash that. But
yeah, and a thought just came to mind, like, as a premium luxury brand, your pricing will obviously reflect that. So I can imagine it being an interesting challenge. Like, if you weren't getting the sales you wanted, like, there'd be a temptation to drop your prices, say, for example, but to remain in that luxury status, you've got to stick to your guns, and I'm sure similar challenges may arise in the future, but that'll be very interesting.
Yeah, and I think, that's something we wanted to showcase while we were documenting this journey is, showing every single detail. We've been focused on the smallest little details possible. And, people have seen what we've gone through with, our packaging, our product design, our website creation, our campaigns. And that's something we wanted to showcase, to show like we are investing so much into this. And, at the end, you will get your statement piece that will be the premiumest reusable coffee cup out there.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. So before we end, Niall, I usually hand over the mic and ask if you have a question for me.
Oh, okay. Good question. Let's think. Is this about anything, by the way? Like business,
anything.
Personal, anything?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, okay. I've got one.
Okay.
Share like your two biggest goals for your personal life, but also your business life.
Okay. So in my business life, it's in line with me starting this podcast in the first place and chatting to founders to learn about how they did it and also improve just speaking and learning more about business. And so a pretty short-term goal for me was to start my own business. And I am currently pursuing that with a few people in sort of different avenues, and it's more testing the market and seeing which one actually carries weight. So that's definitely a goal for me. It's inevitable. And the reason I started this podcast was because I had a lot of unlearning to do because of my upbringing and schooling and social stigmas. I felt like I was trained to work a 9 to 5, and so there's a lot of fears. There's a lot of fears involved in like taking that leap. But having these conversations makes me understand and realize that it's way more attainable than most people think. And so, while I'm learning, I hope that listeners also understand that and are able to take the leap. So that's the first one. And in my personal life, I intend to get married very soon, and so that's another goal. So
have you popped the question, or is this still early on?
Not early on, but I will soon. So yeah.
Oh, I'll be waiting to hear. That'll be a post.
yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's cool.
So well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking, and thanks for joining me today. Now, thank you for sharing your journey. I'm really looking forward to following the Cupsley journey and following all your guys' progress on LinkedIn. As you said, you share a lot about it, so it's great to follow along. And if people do want to follow along and find out more about you and Cupsley, where can they do so?
Yeah, so it's just Niall Cleaver on pretty much all platforms. So yeah, it's pretty simple. But yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks for a great conversation. Hopefully I didn't mess up too much.
You definitely didn't. I think that was a great conversation, and there's a lot for listeners to learn from this. So thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate you making it all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed the episode. One more quick reminder before you go. I have a weekly newsletter by the same name, Another Excuse, where I cover 4 topics: something that has changed my perception, a tool that could be useful to you, content that is actually worth consuming, and a concept that I try break down and explain. If this sounds of any interest to you and you need a kick up the arse, then you can subscribe at the link below. Thanks for joining me again, and I'll see you next week.